Hey everyone, RPG A Day Challenge continues, and today's prompt is obscure. I want to talk about a game. It's going to be like a review and a little bit of a playthrough all together. It's called Call to Adventure, and it's from Brother Wise Games. It ticks off the boxes, I think, that a lot of us want when we play role-playing games. If you're somebody who enjoys role-playing games, you're probably going to enjoy Call to Adventure. So what you have is you each have one of these player boards, and they've got three different sections for your cards, and those represent the three acts that the story is going to be comprised of. And those acts are represented by these cards. You can see, obviously Roman numeral 3, that's going to be Act 3, Roman numeral 2, right here, Roman numeral 1. So our three acts for the story. But those three sections on the storyboard are also representative of the three phases of the adventurer's journey, we might say. Your origin, which is represented by this deck, your motivation, represented by this one, and then the third section of those cards is your destiny. Colors of these cards match the different acts, and I think incidentally they are also the colors for the three covers of the Lord of the Rings books, which turned into the three covers for the Lord of the Rings box set of DVDs, although they don't go in the same order. Green was the color for Fellowship of the Ring. The third act's sort of reddish brown color was the Two Towers, and this was the color of Return of the King. But it's lovely, it's evocative. My favorite edition of the Lord of the Rings books. And you begin the game by handing out two of these different cards, your origin, so I deal myself two of these. So I've chosen the Outlander and the Sailor. I don't want to be a sailor, so I'm definitely going to choose the Outlander. The first time you play the game, the rules suggest that you don't even give a choice, you just pick one card. That's because you don't really know the strategy the first time you ever play the game. And now I pick my motivation. I got Lone Wanderer and Vow of Vengeance. I'm an Outlander. Lone Wanderer feels a little too on the nose. It's like, I'm an Outlander and I'm a Lone Wanderer. Boring. We've seen that before. I want to do Vow of Vengeance. That sounds exciting. That's a story I want to read. And then I go for my third set, which is Destiny. And what I've got here is One with Nature and High Arcanist. And I'm going to go with One with Nature, because I feel like maybe there's a full circle thing going on there. As I go from Outlander to this Vow of Vengeance, this dark time in my life, and then I'm going to try to resolve it up with One with Nature. Now I say I'm going to try those things, but I don't actually know that that's how it's going to turn out, because the game obscures where, there's the future of my hero is obscure to me at the beginning of this game, and that's why I chose to talk about this game today. And now I'm going to prepare the story decks. And the way that we do this is by shuffling these three acts of story cards, and then we reveal four of them. Now that I've got the game all set up, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to play each act separately, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to tell you about each of those acts and reveal to you how this game moves from an initial point of obscurity, where we don't know who our hero really is. We sort of have we have a sketch at this point, towards perfect clarity. So my first act is complete. I'm an Outlander, this is my origin, and I started out foraging for food. And while I was foraging for food, I came across a lost child. And although I'd been a loner up until that point, I decided that this lost child opens something up inside this lone wolf. But there was an ally involved with that, a card called Cruel Master. And I decided that it was the lost child who belonged to this Cruel Master, and that I had to harness a dark power to deal with this Cruel Master, sacrificing that card and gaining some points. Again, I'm not really going to go into the mechanics of the game. I'm more focusing on the really cool story aspects that are found in the cards' descriptions, those evocative titles, and the wonderful artwork. Act 2 complete, the motivation phase of the game, which was, for me, was Vow of Vengeance. And I was trying to push everything towards this Vow of Vengeance. And so I started out with this idea that there was a criminal to be caught. But I have this card called Soothe a Savage Beast. So I thought, well, maybe everybody thinks it's a beast that's been doing whatever has been going on. So I soothe the Savage Beast as a way of revealing that this is the innocent party in this particular situation. I came into true love at some point, and I think my true love was killed, and so I had to catch a criminal and solve a mystery all in one, and those things were all sort of wrapped up together. And the reason that I went with sacrificing the true love is because if you take a look at that Vow of Vengeance card, it's obviously a character who is overwrought with grief, so I tried to weave that into the cards that I was choosing and the way in which I was playing the game. And finally, Act 3. Act 3, I was to come to my destiny, which is one with nature. And on the path to becoming one with nature, I had to banish a fiend, which was what restored the balance in the forest. Wonderful card there, hey, with this forest spirit creature, which reminded me of that savage beast from Act 2. I wondered if perhaps was the same monster. And this, in some way, made me supernatural. I think this is just a gorgeous card. Really fits with the story that I've been trying to craft here of this outlander who's, doing all these things in nature. His entire story feels almost Miyazaki-esque. So becoming supernatural allows me in the end to finally become one with nature. This is a very, very cool game. Really great storytelling aid. So there you have it. The whole story from start to finish. Starts out as an outlander, a loner, moves on to a life where he has to, engage in this vow of vengeance, and finally comes back around to the land that bore him in the first place, becoming one with nature. Normally, solo mode would be played with a adversary like this, the warlord, but I chose not to play with an adversary today because I wanted to just focus on this idea of how this game crafts a story for an adventurer. I think this would be a great way to start out a D&D campaign. If you're looking for a background for your characters, just play the first act, and you've got a sketch in place that gives you an obscure beginning that will gain in clarity as time goes on and you play to find out what happens next. This idea of moving from obscurity to clarity is something that gets talked about a little bit in games like Dungeon World. Sage Latoura's brilliant take on old school Dungeons and Dragons style gaming. And one of the premises of Dungeon World is play to see what happens. And that's very different from some role players' approaches, which is where they build this huge backstory and then they try to weave that into the game, versus like coming in with a bit of a sketch of an idea of who you are, and then as the game progresses, fleshing that out and bringing greater clarity to the obscurity that initial sketch gave you. Play to see what happens.